Hi, everybody. Brian here. Just a note before today's episode begins. This episode was recorded a while ago, probably a year ago, maybe the summer or fall of 2023. And due to a technical mix-up completely on my end, it just never got uploaded to my podcast hosting website. So this is a little bit delayed. And so if there's a reference or two to a recent show that was played and it happened to be mentioned in 2023, just keep that in mind that this was not a recently recorded episode. So this is a bonus episode in a way, although it should have been released nearly a year ago. So my apologies to today's guest and my apologies to all of you listeners. All that said, please enjoy today's episode. Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Attendance Bias. I am your host, Brian Weinstein. Today's special guest is the returning champion, Thom Epps. He was a guest on Attendance Bias way back in the summer of 2020 when the podcast was just getting off the ground. Somehow, with the excitement on my part of hosting a podcast and Tom's excitement of being a guest on the podcast, his early episode completely missed the point. Thom actually picked a show that he did not attend, and I didn't see anything wrong with that even during the interview. The episode aired as preceded, and if you scroll back to one of the earliest episodes of this podcast, you'll be able to find it. But when you fast forward a couple of years, Thom and I saw one another at Atlantic City this past summer. He asked if he could redeem himself by coming back on the show to talk about a concert that he did attend. Of course he could. And he is here today to talk about Phish's show from June 22nd, 2000 at the Amsouth Amphitheater in Antioch, Tennessee, which is basically Nashville. I'd heard chunks of this show throughout the years, but I never listened to it straight through. My focus was always on the special guests toward the end of the second set, but there's so much more to appreciate here, including a bouncy version of Sand, a Silky Smooth 2001, and much more. So let's join Thom to talk about No Quarter, Weinstein Bagels, and the zeitgeist of 2000 as we discuss Phish's concert from June 22nd, 2000 in Nashville, Tennessee. Thom, welcome back to Attendance Bias. How are you?
I'm great, Brian. Great. Happy to be here, man.
It's been a while since we've spoken to each other via Zoom for this podcast. You were one of the first people I spoke to, even when I had an interview or even before I had an idea for a podcast. And you were one of my first interviews, but we kind of got it wrong. We both
totally blew it.
Yeah, but I totally blew it too. Just to give the audience just some context of how long ago it was last when Thom and I spoke for this podcast. His interview was the first time I learned how to insert music clips into an episode. So anytime you hear an episode of Attendance Bias and there's a portion of a song that kind of creeps in, you can thank Thom for that because I learned how to do it while editing his episode. So Thom, just to give a little bit of background and reminder, what was the show that you picked and why was it weird that we talked about it 2 years ago?
Well, so we had kind of talked and you workshopped with me a little bit, the idea for this show. We kind of just threw some ideas off the wall at each other one day during COVID and kind of came up with this idea of attendance bias being such a great idea. And then when you asked me to do the show, I don't know what it was. And it may just be, I always try to be a little bit off the wall, a little bit weird with my selections of things, but I picked a show I didn't go to. I had no attendance bias. I completely blew the theme of the show in the first week of your podcast. Like what was I thinking? I have no idea. And I look back at it and we were talking at Atlantic City this summer on the beach, man. And I was just like, is there any way I could get back on and redeem myself? Because I don't know what the thought process was, but it was just a total bonehead pick. Like, what are you doing, man?
But it was a good show.
Yeah. Yeah, it was fun to get into, and we talked a lot about, where Phish was at the time. It was 99. This would have been my first Phish show. I was still, before I'd gotten to college, I was in Towson, Maryland, and it was Merriweather. And so I think my friend got grounded the week before. You can listen back to the show. We go into the full details. And good show. We kind of talked about 99 and such. And I later did get to see Phish that year when I went to college. So, but didn't, for whatever reason, didn't want to do my first show. Nothing big jumped out. But I think today we have a good show to review, drawing from shows I've actually been to. So.
You could say you blew it, but I also blew it because when you said that we should do a show that would have been your first Phish show, I was just like, all right, yeah, sure, why not? I was so in love, in almost like an Ed Wood kind of way, just so in love to talk about any Phish concert with someone who is excited that I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And we did it. But now you're back, in your words, to redeem yourself. And you picked Phish's concert from June 22nd, 2000 at, I imagine this is no longer the name, the Amsouth Amphitheater in Antioch, Tennessee.
I don't even know if it exists anymore. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's Nashville, right?
Yeah, it is. It's south of Nashville, so it's one of those amphitheaters that outside of the main city, so it's like called a different city, but it's Nashville. And you'll see with the show, the guests, etc. It's Nashville, but yeah, I think it may have closed. I don't know.
Well, that'll be something for me to check out during the fact check.
Nice.
But before we get there, oh yeah, and by the way, the last time that you were on Attendance Bias, we didn't even have a lightning round. So I hope you're excited for your second show, but your first Attendance Bias lightning round.
Do I have to answer fast or just concise?
Just neither.
Okay. Sweet.
Attendance Bias lightning round.
So, Thom, when was your first Phish show, and what do you remember about it?
So my first Phish show was 9/28/99 at Oak Mountain. I remember everything about it. So I had missed that Merriweather show in the summer, but then went to school, Georgia Tech in Atlanta, for my freshman year, 1999. Graduated spring, in school in the fall, and I immediately I think we talked about this a little bit on the podcast before, but I immediately, kind of joined a fraternity at Georgia Tech, and found my friends, found my family. My PH fam, and immediately had some folks that were interested in going to shows, and I was like, "Hey, Oak Mountain is like a couple hours away. Is anybody going to the show? No, why not? Tickets now. Let's do this." So I guess within a month of being there, I was on the road to see my first show at Oak Mountain. Remember everything about it. I think we took 2 cars. It was a bunch of people, older people I didn't know that well at the time, so a little strange and all sorts of discovery. I discovered you couldn't buy cigarettes in Alabama at age 18. That was weird. But
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was I have no idea. It was a mind-blowing experience that we kind of talked about on the last podcast for sure.
Well, what was your most recent show, and what did you think of it?
So my most recent show was I went to Dick's. I went to a good many shows this summer. But I've been busy with work, and I missed a couple because I just had some heavy work deadlines. My dog went down with an injury. There was just a lot of stuff that happened, so I missed some shows. And then I was heading out to California for work, like right after Dick's. So I was like, let me go catch a couple of the Dick's shows on my way out there, since I missed all those other shows. I think I missed like 5 shows this summer that I had tickets to. We got the tickets out to people and stuff, but it was just a bummer. And so actually went to Dick's for night 3 and night 4, woke up for night 4, and my back was tweaked so bad. I was just like, there's no way I'm going to the show. So I had to miss another one. So it was a rough summer, but night 3 was, to me, so fantastic that it really wasn't that big of a deal to miss one, because I don't know, I had so much fun night 3. We went about things in a different way. Didn't party a lot, just kind of went, got close as soon as gates opened, got a close spot, and just hung out. Was so close. The light rig was just insanity from up there. Good vibes all around. It was just a great time. I honestly, there's not even a lot that I remember from the set list. The one thing that does stick out, and this will come back in the lightning round, was the No Quarter. And I'm not really a fan of that song. And I was actually like really pleased to see it live. It was pretty awesome. So,
are you not a fan of No Quarter overall, like by Led Zeppelin? Or are you not a fan of Phish playing it?
I wasn't a big Zeppelin guy growing up, and I get Zeppelin, I get the draw, and I understand the power of the guitar that's wielded. It just, that song to me, we don't have to touch it again, but when we talk about my most controversial Phish opinion, it's just gloomy and doomy and like not fun at all to me. It's just not my vibe. And I see people flipping out about it, and I'm like, I don't feel that at all. But honestly, seeing it at night 3 of Dicks was like, okay, I get it.
What is the first Phish song you ever heard live?
Well, so I was going in that Oak Mountain show. They opened with Wolfman's, but we were like dicking around in the lot. I don't even know what we were doing. Like, I don't think I heard that the band had come on. I think somebody was trying to get a ticket or something. We didn't get in at the beginning of the show. We were coming from Atlanta, like had to get through rush hour traffic. People had class, this, that, and the other. So we weren't there a long time before the show. So Sneakin' Sally was the second song, and we threw down. It was great. Inspired me later to pilfer my mom's copy of Robert Palmer in her vinyl collection, and I put it on my wall a bunch in college as I moved house to house and eventually lost track of it. I wish I still had it.
When Harry Hood is played, do you chant Hood?
Dude, I yell Hood loudly and enthusiastically. Hood chant haters can, I don't know, step off, man. And so this is one of the reasons I picked this show. Hood's a really big song to me. When I was in college, I got to say, like, mental health wasn't always working in my favor. Went through some depression, some anxiety and stuff, and Hood really became a big song for me. And a lot of that was, well, it's wrapped up in the beauty of the playing and how you could just get lost in it. And it's so, like, I don't know, triumphant, hopeful at the end. The other side of it too was like there was just like a lot of mystique around it, like the weird, like clunky reggae, the Hood chant, the minor, the glow sticks. There was just so much to it. And it was always my song. And so,
do you still feel that way when they play it?
Not as much anymore, honestly. Like I'm in a much better spot in life where I don't need Hood to feel good, if you will. Back then it was one of those things where, like, man, it could just pull me out of like whatever, doldrums I was feeling. And so kind of as I, matured and got a little better headspace, it didn't take as such a central role, but I still do love it. I will say that I'm like kind of a Hood purist, and that's why this one's kind of interesting in this show, because there's other things going on. And like, I remember seeing one in like 2003, maybe in Charlotte, where they do this like heavy metal jam. And I'm like, I'm just not really a big fan. Like, play Hood, man. It's so great as it is. And like, focus on making it as beautiful and peaky as you can. To me, we don't need to explore beyond just like tickling those feel spots for me. But
the one in Atlantic City was pretty great. It rang that bell for me.
It was probably one of the more standard, really nice versions I've seen in a while, for sure. Yeah, good call. Because I didn't remember that, but yeah.
If you could pick any venue in the world for Phish to play, forget about getting a ticket. How many? Is it too big for them? Is it too small for them? Whatever venue in the world that you could imagine, where would you want them to play?
No, I wrote down a response to this because I like, honestly, venues to me don't really matter that much. For me, the best venue is just one I can move around in smoothly, easily, and have access to things like water and bathrooms. That's all I really care about. So I think I wrote down, I would love to see like an instrumental set just in a beautiful natural setting. So thinking of like them playing just all instrumental in like a quiet sequoia grove with like candles all around. Oh, or my secondary thought was, if anybody's ever been the Elkmont campground in the Great Smokies, in like June or July, they have these synchronous fireflies that are just amazing. So
hold on, I'm gonna write that down. Can you say that again?
Yeah, so it's in the Elkmont campground of the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, and they have these synchronous fireflies. And it's actually, this is a Phish related story. We were, I think 2009, the big tour and everything coming back, and they announced some shows in Knoxville. I was living in, where was I? Oh, Clemson at the time. And we decided, we're like, oh, we'll go to that Knoxville show, but let's camp in the Smokies the night before. And we get a spot at the campground, and, we go show up, and we're getting out of our car, and the guy's like, y'all here for the fireflies? And we're like, what are you talking about?
Here we are now.
yeah, I guess so. And he tells us all about him. We're like, okay, that sounds really cool or really lame. I don't know. And we went, and it's an amazing occurrence. It's just like, they flash like 5 times in a row, but they're not all together. So it looks like when, say, Aaron Judge is trying to hit the 60-second home run and all the shutter bulbs go off, right?
Right.
It looks like that, and it like just swirls through the forest. It's amazing. So honestly, not to take anything away from Chris Kuroda, I would just love to see a natural setting like that with some sort of like ambient little flickery lighting stuff would just, I think, blow my mind.
And finally, what is the weirdest thing you've ever seen at a Phish show?
This one I had trouble with. The weird to me, there's not a lot that can weird me out. So I guess I would have to say I saw two Wooks having sex in the lawn during Atlanta 2003. And I tell you what, man, it was distracting as hell. And I had to move. Like, it was just like, all right, I get being swept up in the moment, whatever.
Maybe they were playing Harry Hood.
Themselves?
No, the band, and that just moved this couple.
Oh, no. They were playing. It was Tweezer, man. And it was like Tweezer. And I'm like, I can't. And I was just like, oh, man, dude, not cool.
When was this show played?
When you first appeared on this podcast, it was a joke between us, or it became a joke between us, that the summer of 1999 was an underrated, or at least an underrepresented Phish tour. It was our goal, and this is a quote from one of us, probably you, make 1999 Phish a thing, to like make a trend. And since then, I've been schooled by podcast guests on 1999 Phish. So we did make 1999 Phish a thing, but on the flip side, it's revealed I can't think of any other word, my delinquency of 2000 Phish. I don't know nearly as much about Phish in the year 2000 that I should. I recently had a guest on who discussed the show from the fall of 2000, and our conversation focused mostly on the poor quality of the audience recordings from that era, that it wasn't desirable for me in real time to listen to the new shows in 2000 because I couldn't hear them anyway. I especially couldn't hear Page. Like, it was really difficult to hear the higher middle ends. It also focused on farmhouse songs that were everywhere, Trey solo songs that were everywhere, the exploding size of the crowd. And it was then that I realized I know nothing about summer 2000. So in terms of path and infrastructure, just to look at the route of the tour, the band played 7 shows in Japan in mid-June before they came back stateside, and they began the United States tour with today's show on June 22nd. It mostly hugged the East Coast at typical stops like Camden, Hartford. It cut to the Midwest and ended in Columbus on July 15th. This tour was 20 shows in less than a month. So it was a lot packed into a little. My general sense is that the band was leaning pretty heavy into songs like Gotta Jaboo, Back on the Train, Down with Disease, and shows that kind of started at 1,000 miles per hour. It always was very energetic to begin before a lot of extended jams came around, and it would become a show full of layers and loops. They were much less focused on precision and more into soundscapes and synthesizers. What do you remember about Phish in 2000?
Phish in 2000, I think they were, I don't know if it was like their PR machine or something, but they were cranking. They were out in the general populace. I guess it's the Big Cypress, Peter Jennings, Cheesecake, The Phish. They were also on Entertainment Tonight or Entertainment Weekly or whatever, that the 4, they did a cover with each band member. There were 4 editions. I think we tried to get all 4 or something like that. The Farmhouse came out, and Heavy Things was on the radio in places.
Yeah. They were on the VH1 Hard Rock Live special.
Dude, that was awesome. I remember recording that like from the fraternity house, like trying to make sure we got it, but we also wanted to go out that night or something like that. So we had to freak out about if the timer was going to work or not. Yeah, totally. So they were out in the zeitgeist, if you will, more so than we've ever seen them. I was working at Einstein Bagels, my good friend Kieran, and they would always play Heavy Things on like the corporate like radio mix. Whenever we were closing up shop, it was like around like 5 o'clock because bagel places close early. Not a big dinner crowd. And we'd be like mopping and like Heavy Things would come on. It would be awesome. It was just super cool. You know what I mean? Because you don't hear them you don't hear Phish in the general mainstream areas like that. So yeah, big like that. They were nominated for a Grammy. So this goes into the show opener. First Tube nominated for Grammy Instrumental. Yeah, man, they were out there.
Well, what was your Phish biography like at the time in Phish in 2000?
Yeah, so at the time, like I'd seen that show in Oak Mountain in the fall, and I just got into college, and met my core friends, and there were people into music coming from high school. Some people got me into bluegrass, some people were into Dave Matthews. There were some other things, and I was the Phish guy, and I was like, hey, everybody, listen to Phish. It's gonna change your lives. Let's do this. And kind of got people turned on in my
There's one in every fraternity house.
Yeah, I was the guy. I was annoying, probably, for sure. But man, I just loved them, and I was just rapidly, becoming addicted, really. Just had to go see more. So I'd only seen that one show, so I was really, really excited. Like I couldn't go to Big Cypress, just didn't have anybody with a car, didn't have anybody willing to do that. Nobody was willing to make that big of a jump. They would maybe see a show, not go do the camping thing, right? So just not in the headiest crowd, whatever, that's fine. We all figured it out eventually. So I was just raring to go when this tour was announced. And so there's 2 dates in Atlanta that follow this show in Nashville. So we were definitely, all my friends were definitely going to those shows. But I was able to get a car full to head up to this Nashville show to do the tour opener.
Why do you have attendance bias toward this show, the one you actually went to?
So this one, because it really, I would say, like, just going back to my history, my first show, it was like I was seeing things for the first time. I didn't really know what was going on. This is the show that, like, I knew what to expect. I knew what I was getting into. I was so freaking excited to be there. I mean, I think we hit the lots the second the gates opened. We were there listening to sound check, hanging out with people. I was so ready. Not to mention the Hood, which we'll get into as we break down the show, was really huge for me. Hood was a huge song for me. And this show just looms large in all of my, my history because of that space of, like, I was ready to go. It was like the first time I was just like really just on it. You know what I mean? Like I knew what it was going down, and I was just ready to just take it in at that level. And also, like, the show has all this guest stuff going on, and you don't see that a lot with Phish. And it was just like, it was a big thing, and there were big songs played, and it was just so big because of all that.
Set 1.
Well, the show opens with First Tube. You're Grammy nominated. First Tube.
Hey, why not open your summer tour with your Grammy nominated instrumental song?
Yeah.
Eventually lost to Metallica for some, like, throwaway. Sorry, Metallica fans. Maybe it's a big song to you, but I'm sure it was just like, hey, Metallica did an instrumental song. Let's give the Grammy to them. You know what I mean? Like, that's probably what it was.
I will say, and I don't think these words have ever crossed my lips, in defense of Metallica, they've once lost a heavy metal Grammy to Jethro Tull. And I would not consider Jethro Tull heavy metal. So maybe it's just paying it forward. So maybe someone will have to lose to Phish sometime coming up. So keep your eyes and ears open.
But it was either First Tube or it was the packaging for the Hampton Comes Alive.
Well, I know Hampton Comes Alive was nominated for a Grammy. Yeah. But they opened this set with First Tube, and back then this was a fairly common show opener. Now we assume that it will close the set, close the show, but it's really exciting. This is a really great place for it to open a show. You must have been raging.
Oh, dude, it was so exciting. Yeah, because obviously the song was huge with Farmhouse coming out, and just ready to go,
They follow it up with Wolfman's Brother, which I wrote down, continuing our baseball analogies, the perfect 2-hole hitter. It is the best follow-up. It was then, and it still is now.
Wolfman's can really get out there and funk some things up. I would say re-listening to this one, it's kind of a droner. It gets a little boring, and then, like, everybody steps in at the end to, like, amp it up before the close.
Yeah, I had the same idea. I thought that it's cliche, but the band is more like an organism as opposed to Trey soloing over 3 other guys setting down a rhythm. But it was very democratic. It's easy for the fans to find their groove in something like this. When you call it droney, I imagine a lot of people just kind of slowly moving their bodies back and forth, just like getting really deep into it. And then you're right. It does get a little bit more assertive toward the end until we get at the very end at 11 minutes, a full-on In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida tease.
So I knew that was like, I know that line, right? I have no idea what that song is though. So I'm not like a heavy metal guy, but I know of it. You know what I mean?
Oh, you gotta, right when we get off this call, it's 15 minutes long, by the way.
Nice. Oh, that's the one that the organist plays on The Simpsons.
Yes, right? Yes, it's what the old lady organ plays in the church in the Garden of Eden by Iron Butterfly.
Yeah.
But after that awesome push up for energy of Wolfman's Brother for the second song of the set, they go into Beauty of My Dreams. And my first thought is it's usual Phish bluegrass, but knowing what we know now, I wonder if this was kind of a warm up for what's going to come later in the show, because when you look out, this set list overall, first and second, is a little more bluegrass heavy than one might expect in 2000.
It's kind of crazy heavy, and like looking back on it, like and kind of like trying to revisit my memories. I guess it's surprising that they really did, knowing what would come in the second set with all the guests. They were kind of playing these light and silly, kind of crazy, fishy tunes. And their bluegrass lilt by themselves before. So I was surprised by that. I really do like the song. Beauty of My Dreams is fun. And I kind of miss, they still pepper in. I feel like I've seen Old Home Place a bunch over the past couple of years. Not as much of other songs, but
there's always like one per show. There's always at least one per show.
Would you say that holds out lately though? I feel like it's maybe like 2 per tour, right? Like
no. I'll stick to it. I still think it's without checking anything. I think you're likely to hear Poor Heart.
Fact check.
Yeah, I'm going to check. I'm going to look at the fact checks just as of 2022. I'll limit myself there. After Beauty of My Dreams, there's Golgi Apparatus, an oldie but a goodie.
Yeah, I love Golgi, and like, dude, honestly, I think I wrote in the notes like, not a song I think about a lot or like I'm like clamoring to see, but man, love it when I do see it. And, one of those things, like I always think about Bittersweet Motel. There's that one scene where they're like showing the Rochester outside snowy and everything. And it's like that lilting part of Golgi after like, before the big build up to the end. I really love that. It's a beautiful part of the song. And this one, I just don't feel like Golgi is typically, it doesn't change much, but it is a nice song.
It doesn't change much, but you're right. It's nice to hear. It was played 10 times in 2000. Which is, it's like just enough to be right in the middle of that bell curve. Yeah. It's not a rarity, but it's not overplayed. It's like snugly right there.
Well, what would your call be for now? I feel like I saw it at Bethel. Maybe it opened a set at Bethel.
How many times would they play it in a tour
maybe
this year, you're asking?
Handful? Yeah. No.
Well, it's funny, though, because if you remember in Atlantic City and this tour in general this past summer, they added this like jammy part to the end of it. They've kind of added a little bit to it. So I think they played it. My total shot in the dark guess, I would say maybe 4 times this tour, summer 2022. That's based on nothing.
Yeah, definitely 3 to 5, I think. So
3 to 5.
I think you're spot on. Yeah.
On a scale of 2 to 3, I'd give it a 3.
For sure. And now I need to go back and listen to the Atlantic City, man, because I don't remember that.
Yeah, you got to listen to it.
Yeah.
And then I would probably say the highlight of the set, if you're into the jams, if you're there for the jams, is Limb by Limb. It's typical. It begins at about 3.5 minutes. Page leads the way. And I liked it because, like I just said earlier, I usually cannot hear Page in audience recordings from 2000. And he really sticks out in this. And it really was a pleasure to listen to.
I totally agree. I don't have anything else like specific to say about it, but this one is like a really good one. It's like they give it a little extra mustard, and it's a good tune. I don't know. I mean, how do you feel about Limb by Limb in general? Sometimes I'm like stoked. Sometimes I'm like, meh, I don't know. It's not one that has like a high place in my like, likes and whatnot, but it can be good.
What I like the song Limb by Limb very, very much. I think it's a beautifully composed song. And I think what you ask me, what do I think of it live, really hangs on the jam. Does it go anywhere? Is it exciting? Or is it a bunch of noodling for about 7 minutes that just comes to a weird close with Fishman's drum beat? On the Phish.net jam charts, here's what they wrote. Why this version is why many folks consider the Limb by Limb jam somewhat similar to the Grateful Dead's Crazy Fingers. Trey soars in this version. And that wouldn't have come to my head in a billion years if I didn't read it.
Yeah. But I will say, so, I mean, you're right. I think if it's jammed and it's given a little something, it can make a set nice. I would say for some reason it has the same place as Vultures in my mind. Like, it's like, could be just kind of a boring cast off, just standard played, or could have something a little bit extra that really, puts something big into the set.
Well, something not as big after Limb by Limb, although you might disagree. It seems like we have different perspectives on songs, which I like, is Bug.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the song of the year in 1999 and 2000.
Yeah.
They seem to play Bug a lot.
Farmhouse. I did like this. I think, was this the one where they paused for a bit before the song?
Yes. At the end of Limb by Limb and before Bug, there's literally a full 2 minute.
I do not like
pause.
that. And I remember not liking that at the show for many different reasons. You're at a show, things are going on and blah, blah, blah. But Bug for me, I really, I get it. It's whatever. But there's something about the summer, outdoors, and Bug when Paige hangs on those organ notes right before like the final build, and then you get the Fishman fills, and then you're screaming Bug. There's something about those organ notes that make my mind think of like twinkling lights and fireflies, and it's just summer, and it's like a big anthem. And I know it's not the greatest Phish song, but it always feels a little special to me.
It is an anthem rocker. I agree with you.
Yeah.
But after Bug, there's more bluegrass where we get right into Poor Heart.
Yeah. Yeah. And like listening back to the show and like thinking about it, I was just like, who decided to play these songs? Like, what's coming in the second set. You obviously had to line that up, right? Like, and now you keep playing, you keep going back to that well. Were they trying to be fishy forecasty? Could be.
I think they were trying to, I think they were trying to get loose.
Yeah.
I think they were trying to get the crowd in a mood.
Yeah.
Like you said, fishy forecasty.
Yeah.
A small part of me thinks they were trying to look over to the side stage to the guests who were waiting for the end of the second set, being like, hey, look, we didn't just ask you here just for funsies. We could play this music
this
too.
This is what we do. Yeah.
I think that was part of it.
Yeah. Wouldn't have thought of that at whatever, I think I was 19 when at the show. Would not have thought of that at all at the time.
Well, no, we have 20 years of hindsight at our benefit. And the next, we're getting close to the end of the set already, is Roger and Chalk Distorture.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say I'm surprised. Again, the set list does seem oddly crafted because to me, you're going to say Roger, I'm going to say Rage. That's fine. I think that holds the same kind of set place as Bug does to me. It's kind of that like, it'll go down and be twinkly, but then it has a bigger build, like the bang, and I love it. But I think at this time in the set, I'm probably like ready to rock,
Well, that's good because Chalk Distorture closes it.
Yeah.
And you can't get much more rock when it comes to Phish.
It's a really good version. And I sadly will say, I don't remember it at all. Do not recall this in my memory banks whatsoever, but glad to listen back. Thank you, Tapers.
For sure. And this recording isn't bad, compared to a lot of recordings from 2000. And, Lord knows how much technology has improved when it comes to not just recording, but remastering old recordings from what was available at this time compared to what's available in 2022. So this was a real pleasure to listen to, but it is a very first set. It was constructed.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think, we don't write set lists, whatever, like there might have been some more, maybe they don't write set lists, but they have conversations around writing set lists, right? Like,
well, they have conversations on stage in front of 15,000 people for 2 minutes at a time, apparently.
Yeah. 2 minutes before Bug. Yeah. Oh, that was rough.
But this Chalk Distorture, I wrote, it gets good chaotic. Those memes that are like good, like neutral, chaotic. Like good. To me, this was a good chaos of a Chalk Distorture.
I agree. It has some fire. I would implore the listener to go back and listen to this Chalk Dust. I know there's not many Chalk Dust that if they didn't take off on like a 10-minute jam that people would typically go back and listen to. This is just like a fire Chalk Dust, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's a good way to set the crowd into set break to get excited for set 2. Hi, everybody. Brian here to welcome you to the set break of today's episode of Attendance Bias. First, thank you for listening. And second, just a quick reminder to tell you that even though Attendance Bias comes to you for free, it does take a lot of work and it does take quite a bit of money to keep the lights on here at production. So I just wanted to ask a small favor if you could support the podcast in any number of the following ways. If you could leave a review or a rating of it on whichever podcast app you use. If you could spread the word, telling a friend or someone you think may be interested in it about it. Or probably the most concrete way is to go to www.buymeacoffee.com/attendancebias and donate however much you can financially to help with the continuing costs of Attendance Bias. So thank you again so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy the second half of today's episode.
Set 2.
And set 2 opens with Gotta Jaboo. It wouldn't be summer 2000 without Gotta Jaboo.
That's totally true. This was a big song for me at the time. I think coming off of, I recall maybe having a disc with Jaboo from either, it might have been the Trio stuff, but it might have just been Phish. I can't remember. But it was like the perfect length for me to walk across campus from class to my house. And so I listened to it quite a lot. And it was a really good, just groove and jam. This one really pleased. And I don't know the timing on it, but you will hear the crowd go nuts at a certain point, and there was definitely glow stick war happening. And this was kind of my first exposure to glow stick war. And I remember, alluding to the hood and my love of hood. I remember being like, hey, glow stick wars are for hood, man.
Yeah. Don't you know?
Like, come on, dude. But I do remember also seeing the glow sticks like kind of move from one end of the lawn to the other. And it was like absolutely amazing and blew my mind. So.
Well, I remember on our last conversation, I think we were talking about Sand. That might have been the song this is about. And you called the bass playing, Mike's ability to just, for something like 14 minutes, just keep that same bass line going, the Marcellus effect.
Right, totally.
And that keeps in my mind every time I think of songs from 1999 and 2000, including Gotta Jaboo.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, those were Tony lines, right? And it was Mike playing at a different style. I don't know what his mindset was around that, but he was doing it.
And then it goes right into 2001, which to me is like, all right, I felt like this is kind of what I expect. Kind of when you return home from somewhere you've been away from for a long time and you go to your favorite sandwich place and you have that first bite, you're like, oh, this is what I missed.
Yeah.
This 2001
tour is starting, all right? Tour is starting right here.
That's right. Tour is starting at this show.
Yeah,
and this 2001 is, I can't say that the other stuff isn't a Phish show, but the way I was listening to it, this 2001 is Phish to me.
It was nice, man. And it was a crisp drop into it, like just like tight, crisp, like I don't know, it was just sort of real sharp and like abrupt and like just so intentional, like let's do this. And then I thought it was really nice. Like it was that classic tension and release. It was quiet and build, and then you know what I mean? Like it wasn't like the funkiest like throwdown, but it was just a really nice undulating 2001 in my mind.
There are cheers about every 2 minutes in this recording.
Yeah.
Do you remember what that's about, or is it just the tension and release?
Honestly, I think it was just people ready to get down. You know what I mean? Because we've been doing a lot of slower, bluegrassy, that stuff, and it was like, let's do this.
And to get down to let's do this, they perfect call right into sand, right in the heart of the second set. I even wrote this, when everyone is getting down.
Yeah.
Mike, the rest of the band, and around 3.5 minutes, they all drop out except for Fishman.
Yeah.
And wow, did I love that. I'm a drummer, but something about that, I've never heard them do it before.
Yeah, it was pretty cool, and re-listening to this one was great because this is a song that can also just completely lose me. Like that droney, it can get just kind of dissolve into a drone that just doesn't really ever grab me. And it was bordering on that, and then they went there, and they went to this place where they're like, let's try something different, and let's poke the ether and see what can come out, And it kind of just slowly built back up from there. It was really nice.
Yeah, they did. That's a good way to put it, poking at the ether, because it's 7 minutes. It's very ambient.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2000, it could lose a lot of people, but it turns into, this is my quote, or maybe it's your quote, I can't tell, a supersonic tube jam. I think I wrote that.
That's you.
Yeah, a supersonic tube jam at around 8:15. And aside from the bass line, I couldn't even tell that it's sand.
Yeah, exactly. And what did I say? I said it starts to build back up, and Paige has these like alien chords, and Trey's doing this staccato chop thing. And they get a nice groove going back again. That's probably the tube jam that you're hearing. And then Trey kind of like jangles it a little bit, and then comes out with this like menacing, almost like sneaky, like I'm coming down the alley, like after you kind of vibe. I don't know. It's just like there was a little bit of like this sinister like ability, and just a cool jam.
Very much so. And then we're right in your wheelhouse with this upcoming suite of Harry Hood into Dog-Faced Boy, back into Harry Hood. Yeah, and this is the first time I've heard this.
Yeah, so this was the centerpiece of what I really wanted. This show is so huge because of this too. And I mean, there's just so much to unpack. It was like, Hood was my song at the time. So hearing those first notes, it's just like, yes, they're doing it. And I mean, Hood, I would say, was probably at like a 1 in 3 to 4 show rotation at this time. Not as heavily played nowadays, but it was still pretty heavy back then. They were touring a lot more anyway. But, the Hood, and then it's just like normal, and then all of a sudden it quiets down and goes into this like we all know the song, right? Dogface Boy Hoist, right? I think on its album.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. And so knew it immediately, though obviously never heard it live. How many Dogface Boys have there been? Can't be too many, right?
Yeah, I can't imagine too many. What I noted mostly about it, though, is it sounds just like Harry Hood. You know, you're getting ready for, as you described earlier, that kind of soul cleansing, reggae sort of fun Harry Hood. But during the intro, they play with dynamics so much. It's almost like Trey finds himself in Dogface Boy. Like a true moment of improvisation and spontaneity.
Do you think it was spontaneous? Because I've
yes,
wrestled with that, like thinking about it. I'm like, how it just sounded so well orchestrated. But I mean, they're capable of that. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And I mean, go ahead.
What would have made them go to that song in the well of everything they had? No idea. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that they found themselves there. And on the turn of a dime, Trey said, let's do it. Yeah. And so they play it. And then when they go back into Harry Hood, it's like Dogface Boy never happened. It's so smooth and flawless.
It's like that crisp drop into 2001 I was talking about. It just drops right back in. Like they were on it. You know what I mean? Like all in sync. Like bam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gets right there. It sounds like in the audience that everyone is right on it. Like everyone is hanging on every note.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think at that point, I didn't re-listen today. I will say this is a heavy tune for me, like it just emotionally. So I couldn't listen today, but I listened to it like a week ago, and I don't remember. They had still not done the Harry chant at that point, right?
No, it was there. I listened for. I'm glad that you brought that up because
no. I'm saying before they didn't do it before Dogface Boy, right? They even afterwards. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. Got it. So you still get that, and then so it's like where did this Dogface Boy come from, and then where did it go? Because it just was like completely erased from mind. We're back in Hood,
and then when they start jamming Hood, Fishman is kind of jumpy, which is not usual. He's usually a lot more steady, and creative. And Page's synthesizer comes in. It almost sounds like a saxophone. And I wrote this out as I was listening. I wrote, "Is there a fiddle at 12 minutes and 10 seconds?"
Dude, there is such a fiddle. Like, okay, so this is where, like, I am, and maybe I think there's video out there, and I probably could rewatch it and should have, but I didn't. Putting myself back in the place of, like, people just start coming out of the stage, and, like, we're like, what's going on? Like, who's up there? I don't know what's happening. The guys weren't mic'd that well, right? But I mean, if you read back the notes, the whole McCurry band, besides Del, was on stage, right? And I think they were all, I kind of remember them all being gathered around one mic. That, you know, they're not mic'd separately, so they're playing ambient mic. So it's only picking up a little bit. You hear these little jangles of things, but you start hearing more fiddle, right? And then you start seeing this guy kind of playing the fiddle somewhat bombastically. Now, I'm at this point in my career of music, like, I'm getting into bluegrass. You know, I had a buddy, Kieran, was into Bella Fleck and was getting us into that kind of, you know, stuff. But, like, I don't know who the McCurrys are myself, to be honest. And I might have known Sam Bush just by the Same Old River song, but I'm not sure. And Sam, to me, he was mostly mandolin, right? So seeing him on fiddle was crazy. But this is really why this show, this Hood, and Sam Bush specifically, is why this Hood stands out so much for me. Because, like I mentioned before, like, Hood was such a huge song to me. You know, we talk about guests, and Phish doesn't have a lot of guests. And honestly, their guests are, I don't know if you want to say, like, they're built around the guests' music more so than they're built around Phish's music, maybe. Now,
that's true even today. Like,
that's probably today, maybe not way back in the day when, like, Medeski, Martin, and Wood and stuff were guesting every now and then and things like that. But, like, nowadays it's more about the guests' music, right?
Yeah.
But Sam steps in here and puts fiddle lines on the Hood build that just, I mean, I break down into tears just hearing it, dude. And that's why I said, like, I couldn't listen to it today again, because it's so heavy. It's like I was like I'm not ready for that ride. I can't do it. But yeah, it was just a beautiful moment. You hear a little bit of jangle of the other guys, but Sam's fiddle lines in the Hood build are just, there's something I'll never forget.
And they go into a series, like, kind of a quarter of the show, almost like a mini set within itself of bluegrass favorites, with a tremendous amount of guests that I would need the Phish.net set list right next to me to be able to keep up with who is playing what.
It's basically McCurry band, I think, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's basically McCurry band, and then I think Del comes out to sing the next one, right?
Yes, they play I'm Blue, I'm Lonesome.
Yeah, and Del sings that, and I didn't know the song at the time. I just remember his high-pitched, like, no, I don't know the lyrics.
Some sound of a train going by makes me want to stop and cry. I recall the day that took you away. I'm blue and I'm lonesome too.
It sounds good though. No offense, not you, but but it sounds so good that by the end of I'm Blue, I'm Lonesome, and then at the middle of the next song, Hold What You Got, which I did not know previously, I almost forgot that I was listening to a Phish concert. I just thought I was listening to a big time bluegrass show in a big summer shed.
Yeah, and this was kind of interesting. It kind of reminds me, it's funny, and I think you made a note that there was like Trey drops out almost. It's almost like reminiscent, and like this is prescient. Like Mo started doing like the full band switch thing a couple of years forward from this, and it almost feels like that. It's like a full band switch. I mean, Phish is still there, but it's like, hey, let's have Del's band out for a couple songs. You know what I mean? Yeah, totally. Good times for sure. I do definitely remember a moment of being like, all right, let's get back to Phish. We're ready. You know what I mean?
Did you feel that way? I was going to ask.
I mean, I got to admit to it. Like, I liked bluegrass a lot. I like bluegrass even more nowadays. It took me a little while to grow into it. It could sound repetitive to me at times, but once you find the nuance and you find the right players, there's a lot there. But yeah, man, like so stoked for Phish. Let's get back to Phish, right?
Well, but in Nashville, that's where you find the right players.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. And so, yeah, he's like, it's Phish and Friends tonight.
Yeah, Phish and Friends. So they play Hold What You Got, which I did not know, and then Uncle Pen, which I did. We all did.
Yeah,
I imagine. There was a long warm up before this one. I hear it pretty frequently at shows, but it was Uncle Pen I wrote down that I forgot I'm listening to a Phish show and not just a bluegrass concert. And I was all in for it. Maybe because I wasn't there. Maybe because I didn't have all this pent up excitement like you did at the time. I wasn't new to college when I first heard this. I knew that I could hear something special, but I knew that what was coming and that it ended sometime. I was going to ask you what the vibe was like in the room, because guests, like you mentioned, can sometimes go either way.
Well, I would say it was kind of how I described it. I mean, like, this is cool, this is interesting, but I kind of want to hear another Phish song, right? Yeah.
Well, yeah, and they, instead of another Phish song, though, Trey introduces, quote, one more final special guest.
Yeah.
And then my favorite part, honestly, and I love banter. I love Trey banter.
Yeah.
But my favorite thing he says is, how much he loves this city, and he tells the crowd that they should really go out after the show.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, and he's right. You know, I've been to Nashville twice. I think that's it. My favorite place to go out is the Station Inn.
Yeah.
Because you're going to find, it doesn't matter what night of the week it is, you're going to find the best music in town right there.
Yeah, totally. And Nashville's a great town. We did Nashville together at one point. Hilarious banter. Like, the guests up to that point were like, what? And then you're like, a Judd? Like, I'm like, I kind of know what a Judd is. You know what I mean? But like, I don't know what you mean. I grew up on Long Island.
What does that mean?
Yeah. Knowing that we're going to get into Freebird was absolutely delightful to me. I mean, I was obsessed with, I think I talked about this in the last podcast. I was obsessed with the acapella Freebird. It was like my first MP3 I ever downloaded. And I just like, it was like just right in my wheelhouse of like funny and silly and great. I love gibberish and I love making up gibberish songs on my own. So, so to hear like a full on Freebird was like totally different, but super fun and a great way to close a show. I mean, come on, like,
and I like the message behind it. How Winona Judd starts off by saying her divorce was finalized 1 year ago today.
Yeah.
And so she's going to sing it for herself.
Yeah.
Speaking as a divorcee, I can really respect and appreciate that.
Yeah, it's time. Let's throw it down, right? I think I remember having a little like thought in my head of like, how did this come to be?
I had the same thought yesterday.
Yeah.
Of all the songs.
Well, and it's like Phish was not at this point, like I said, they were getting into the zeitgeist, but they were still like a kind of a dorky group of guys at this point, right? They weren't like, they didn't have that like cool like leather coat kind of vibe.
Try as though Trey might.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So I guess they were like dabbling in bigger circles and things like that. And maybe it was just like a, hey, you know, she's over here. Del knew that she was, I don't know, but would be hilarious to find out.
I mean, everyone's clearly having fun. The best I could think about this is she's giving it her best, but it's really odd. It's really hard. It's hard to hear an arrangement of an earnest version of Freebird as opposed to like the a cappella version you brought up. To hear Phish play Freebird in an earnest rock and roll way, but with this weird country twang to it.
There's too many places I've ever seen. If I stay here with you, boy, things just couldn't be the same. 'Cause I'm as free as a bird now. And this bird you cannot shake. And this bird you cannot shake. And this bird you cannot shake. Lord knows I can't shake.
When in our heads, I think we're all DNA predisposed to hearing Lynyrd Skynyrd.
Yeah.
So to me, I still have to kind of shrug my shoulders when I listen to this one. But
All I'm
it's still a
hearing
good
is
time.
like, Fishman, like,
Yeah.
that's what I'm hearing.
And it ends set 2. It
Yeah.
ends the whole set, and the encore. Holy moly! You want to get back to a Phish song?
Yeah.
The encore with "You Enjoy Myself," the Phish song.
Well, I think it was the right call because, like I said, like we were kind of clamoring for some more Phish at that point, and it's summer tour opener. Like we've done a lot of bluegrass, and it was super fun. But let's get the quintessential Phish tune underway, right? Let's do this. And honestly, I would say I don't even think I had the Farmer's Almanac yet at that point, so I don't have like access to a lot of set lists or know a lot of history. And I was kind of mind blown that YEM would be an encore song. Like I was like, this is kind of special. And I would say
It is.
It is. It's not as special nowadays at this point, but yeah, it is still pretty cool, right?
Definitely.
It's a big chunk of Phish to be getting in bonus time.
Well, Tom, the returning champion, coming back to Attendance Bias. Don't underestimate him because we both picked a show that he was not at for his first go around. Now he comes back to talk about June 22nd, 2000 at, I'll never get used to saying this, Amsouth Amphitheater in Antioch, otherwise known as just Nashville, Tennessee. Tom, thank you for taking the time and really putting us on the ground at what it was like to be at this weird, wacky, jammy, fun Phish show from 22 years ago.
Heck yeah. Thanks for having me, Brian. This was awesome. Super fun to talk about. Super fun to listen to your show and hear all the fans and recounting these tales because we've all got so many and it's just fun to share.
And that's it for today's chat with Thom Epps, but we didn't touch on a whole lot, so we got to double check our facts with the Attendance Bias Fact Check.
Attendance Bias Fact Check.
For the record, Tom's first episode on Attendance Bias featured a discussion about July 9th, 1999 at Merriweather Post. It was the 9th published episode of this podcast, but one of the first ones I recorded. Tom's first show that he attended, though, was at the Oak Mountain Amphitheater in Alabama on September 28th, 1999. Tom is correct about the Amsouth Amphitheater. It is no longer open. It closed in 2006 and was also known as the Starwood Amphitheater. It branded itself as the premier outdoor concert venue of the Nashville area. My favorite bit of trivia, though, on the venue's Wikipedia site says that, quote, aggressive security policies, such as preventing any consumption of alcohol in the parking lots before concerts, led many concertgoers to boycott the venue through the 1990s and up to the time of its closure. I can't imagine what Phish must have been like. Tom made reference to his most controversial Phish opinion, but it was not included in the lightning round for this episode. The reason for that is that his opinion was that he does not like No Quarter. I felt like we covered that ground pretty well when he talked about Night 3 of Dicks. We chatted a lot about Phish being in the mainstream in the year 2000. When it came to Grammy nominations, Phish was up for 2 Grammy Awards that year for the 43rd Annual Grammys. First Tube was nominated for Best Rock Instrumental Performance, and Hampton Comes Alive was nominated for the Best Box Set Packaging. When the news was announced on Phish.com along with the air date for the Grammy Awards, it was accompanied with the following note, quote, "It is doubtful that the awards for these highly prestigious categories will be aired." When discussing our love for Harry Hood, Thom brings up a heavy metal version from Charlotte. That Harry Hood, well worth checking out, was played on July 25, 2003 at the Verizon Wireless Amphitheater. In 1989, Metallica was nominated for the first ever hard rock/metal performance, Grammy. Metallica's nomination was for And Justice for All, while Jethro Tull's nomination was for Crest of a Knave. For what it's worth, Metallica won the Grammy the following year and took out a full-page newspaper ad to thank many people for the award, including Jethro Tull for not releasing an album in 1990. Not exactly a fact check, but I have to hand it to Thom. In the 2022 calendar year, Phish played a lot less bluegrass than I assumed. I scrolled through the MSG, Mexico, and Summer Tour set lists, and there was maybe 3 or 4 bluegrass tunes played total. And finally, Golgi Apparatus has been played either 3 or 4 times per year, each year, dating back to 2018, while Dog-Faced Boy has been played 54 times to date. And that's it for today's episode. I'd love to thank Thom Epps for joining me today, Phish.net for its help with the fact check, and Phish.in for the recording used in today's episode. If you enjoy Attendance Bias, please support the show by leaving a rating and a review of it on your favorite podcast app. You can also follow Attendance Bias on social media, and you can also donate to the operating costs at www.buymeacoffee.com/attendance-bias. Thank you again so much for listening, and I'll see you next week on Attendance Bias.